started. Um, and so I want to do a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. Um, Everyone's going to be muted on this call other than Dave and myself. And if you have questions, please ask them via the chat. And I'm going to actually just send everybody a chat real quick, and feel free to just reply to it. And if you have any questions, and what we'll do at the very end, I'll have some time and I'll ask Dave any questions that anybody asked. Okay, so without further ado, Dave, I want to hand this off to you, and please introduce yourself, and then we'll go into the interview.
Okay, my name is Dave Higgins. I am or was the owner of Speed Pro Harrisburg from 2010 on. As you can see from the picture here, this is actually the building that I ended up buying and building Speed Pro in some years later after we started. But the business went from basically zero to, we were one of the top 10 speed pros in the country last year, and we had a similar year for 2023. So real great returns.
I appreciate that, Dave. Now, if you could just talk to us a little bit about your background prior to Speed Pro.
Okay. I actually was in pharmaceuticals for a number of years. I worked for Wyeth, which was the largest biological manufacturer in the world. That ended up getting bought by Pfizer. I ended up going to a distributor. I was on the veterinary side, and I went to a company that was a distributor, and I ended up, let's put it this way, the new owners decided that they wanted to go in a different direction with a number of us, and I actually separated from the company in 2010, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and I got approached by a broker, and they said, I tested for a couple things, but what caught my eye about Speed Pro was the business-to-business part of it, and that's really where I've always done well and excelled, and that's one of the reasons why I originally went with buying a Speed Pro. I had another opportunity to manage worldwide for a company, and I just decided, I wanted to do something for myself, kind of after the bad taste I had in my mouth after the leaving my old company, the distributor. It just being able to, make my own destiny is really what Speed Pro was offering me in buying a franchise and building this franchise.
Yeah, and I think, Dave, Speed Pro provides you with an opportunity to grow the business prior to you even opening. So talk to us a little bit about that, because look, there's a lot of businesses out there. I mean, many of the folks on this call are working with franchise brokers, consultants, coaches, and they're pitching you fast food, they're pitching you home improvement. What was it about Speed Pro that really, I think, intrigued you initially to pursue it?
First and foremost, it's business to business. So you're not, unless you choose to, or you have certain specific products, you're basically 8:30 to 5:30 or 9 to 5 or whatever that may be. Everything I've done in the past, I like business to business. You're talking to somebody who is trying to improve their business, not a retail situation. That's not to say we don't do retail, but it is more the secondary or tertiary level on which we grow our business. But that was a big part of it to begin with. But one of the things that caught my eye is what they call the Fast Start program. And all the franchise that I looked at, this was the only one that offered something like this. And I've said this in several other situations when people ask me why I bought a Speed Pro. Because Speed Pro allowed me to get busy opening my business without having to get busy and obligated to open my doors. Fast Start allows you to use a buddy studio to basically them produce your product, and you don't have a studio yet. So you're literally out there building that business, building that network, while another trusted Speed Pro who's done all these projects or similar projects before does these things for you at a discount. You sell them to your clients, but you're building that business. So for me, it was such a different approach to it. And not only was it successful for me, but it was actually tremendously successful in terms of me being able to open my doors finally and make money day one.
Hey, Dave, I know like a lot of people, when I talk about the Fast Track or the Kickstart program, a lot of folks say, well, if you're talking to a customer and they want to see your facility, did that happen a lot when you were during that process?
I had a few that started out that way, and I would just say, hey, right now we're in the midst of building the studio, and we're able to do this stuff and get the products done. I mean, you get a few people that you get pushback from on that, but it really was never a big deal. The biggest deal that it came down to was being able to produce the products, do them at a quality level. And what I always tell people is like advertising quality and production at standardized wholesale pricing. It's a unique
Yeah,
approach.
yeah, I agree, and I think it's important to note, and it's funny because the new people I've put in business recently, as soon as they tell their sphere of influence, their network, that they're opening up a business like this, they start to get requests, and they're like, "Well, do you want me to wait do you want to wait, until your doors are open so you can produce it?" And the question is, no, I can do it right now. And as long as you meet their deadlines, what's the difference?
I will tell you that I bought in December of 2010, and back then it was Blair that actually was the president of the company, and he right around you're dealing with a lot of paperwork when you're buying a business and setting this stuff up. But so like right around March or April, he's like, okay, you guys are ready to go. All your stuff is set up in terms of the businesses, in terms of mine was Kavika doing business as Speed Pro, blah blah blah. All that legalese is done. Then what I was able to do was go out and start marketing. And I tell this to everybody: start hitting the print companies, the sign companies, start with those ones there, and just build that wholesale base of it to start. And what happened there is that I started building that, and my goal was to just do 8 calls a day, and maybe the first week to get 1 call back, and then the second week to get 2 callbacks, and so on and so on. And that's the way it built for me. And by the summertime, we were doing so much business that the Speed Pro that we were using was actually having to have somebody else helping because to keep up with their stuff and my stuff. So it just worked out great. And we exceeded our goals in every way, shape, or form. But because I didn't have those, when you open your doors, you have payroll, you have the the mortgage or the lease, I should say, insurance. None of that stuff was on top of my head at the time. So I could do projects like these and other ones similar to this and not have that overhead. It allowed me to quickly build up that clientele and build up my business. Like I said, I opened my business before I even opened my doors.
Yeah, that's great, Dave. And hopefully it's not distracting, but I do have all these projects that you sent me. And again, everybody who's on this call or you're going to hear this call or watch it in the future, these are actual projects that Dave in his studio, obviously they took on and they produced it. And so we're going to talk about some of these, as we move along, but I want to go back. So again, the one thing, Dave, I forgot to, everybody who's on this call, you saw the invite. Dave was a Speed Pro studio owner since 2010, and congratulations to Dave. He sold his studio in 2023. And I thought his story is very valuable for, many of the folks that are going to be on this call and are going to view this call, because look, when you buy a franchise like this, you want to make sure that you have an exit strategy. Many of you on this call, maybe Speed Pro is a 10 to 15 year thing that you're going to do, but how do you really retire? And Dave is a walking story of that. So I want to take a step back. So after you executed your franchise agreement, it took about a year maybe or so to open up. Okay. Other than networking, doing what you did, I'd call that kind of guerrilla marketing, what you were doing to grow the business prior to opening. Once you opened, how were you marketing the business? How was Speed Pro helping you?
There's a number of ways. Yeah, it took me about I mean, you figure from March, say April of 2011, we opened our studio at the end of March, beginning of April of 2012. So it took about almost 11 months basically to do it. But I'll tell you what, that made all the difference, because the day I opened my doors, I was making money. That's unusual. Most of the time, and everybody here on this call, if they've ever talked to anybody that owns a small business, usually they open their doors and the cash is just flowing out the door. That was not the case here for me. So literally we had built up the business enough to cover the payroll, paying myself, the actual lease, the insurance, everything. That's unusual. That's why I think that's one of the reasons what attracted me again to Speed Pro. In terms of the support that they were doing, it's varied over time. We did originally, and I think they still do this, you have somebody who's your marketing person, and the marketing department at Speed Pro has grown enormously. And there's so many different programs in terms of handouts and brochures and those type of things. The biggest part that I've seen grow over the last 5-10 years has been the pay-per-click campaigns, the company, there's a company called MedCell, and there's a couple other ones out there that actually make phone calls for you. There's all sorts of different tools that are given to you. And then the interesting part for me was, once you've done the printers and the sign companies, you move on to, like, and your doors open, that's really the advertisers and the marketing companies that want to see your studio. Sometimes they come in and see your production facility. You've hit that next stage where they want to see those things, the tangent, they want to touch them. So there's so many different things that Speed Pro provides, but one of the other things I will tell you that Speed Pro provides is you have an Ask the Owners email that you can literally put out to anybody. I had like 3 guys that I used to rely on all the time and ask them questions. It's a really interesting group of owners that are dedicated to, being the best in terms of what they're doing. They all want to succeed. And you can put out a question on Ask the Owners and say, hey guys, anybody run into this? What do you do? That's unusual. And people will give you good answers. I had 2 mentors, or 3 mentors, I should say, that I would email or call on the phone. Hey, what do you think of this? And they would just give me great feedback. You're not in competition with the other Speed Pros. Everybody's trying to raise that, the boat. Everybody's trying to be in those boats that rise up. And that's a really refreshing thing to have especially in a franchise system. Because a lot of times people are put on top of each other and they compete, and that's just not the way they do it in Speed Pro.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we've talked about this, Dave. Our territories are so large. They're between 7,000 to 8,000 businesses. So there's a lot of space between you and typically the next Speed Pro. And look, at the end of the day, we work together on projects. That's why we have a national footprint. Okay, you're touching on something kind of, and I want to just dig into it a little bit. So you came into a market, there wasn't a Speed Pro. I'm sure there was competition, like a Fast Signs, a Signorama, maybe Minutemen Press, Alpha Graphics. Where does Speed Pro fit in with those? Because you can disagree with me. I always tell people, go into this as a strategic partner, not competition. So when those guys get overloads of work or whatever it is, if not a wholesale, they're going to need you to help them fulfill orders.
You're talking about the other competition like Fast Signs and stuff?
Correct. Yeah.
I mean, there are some relations that I had with that, and there was other ones where it was not that way. That also depends on them too, Steve. So for me, I will tell you that I put 2 of them out of business, not because we were cheaper than them. In fact, we were more expensive. We put them out of business because we put out the best quality product. And when something went south, we took care of it. We made sure that this was right. And I'll give you a great example. One of those competitors, which I actually don't think of them as competitors. I know that sounds weird, but people ask me about a Fast Signs or a Signorama, and I'm like, they're not my competition, because they don't do what we do, which is a business-to-business partnership and relationship. I'm not that I want somebody to walk in, I got them, and then they're out the door. We were doing a job for a TV station. And the reason why we got the job is because they painted the actual station where they do all the you know, the videography and all that stuff, and it's live taped. And this company before me came in and they put up the wall graphics, and they're in the middle of the actual broadcast, and everything came down on the broadcasters. They never
Wow.
asked them when the wall was recently painted. So if anybody knows anything about current paints, they're all what they call low VOC or non-VOCs, which means they don't smell for very long, but they outgas for anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months. So a lot of the things that we do differently as smart executives and people that own Speed Pros is that we ask questions. And that's what separates us from those other companies, in my opinion. So we're asking the questions. And the funny part is, like I said, they called me up and said, look, this just happened on air. We need somebody who can fix it. And you guys are the top rated in this. So we came in, we checked the wall. We knew exactly what the issue was. We put up the material, and they've never had a problem since. It's just knowing your business and being the source of information to your partners in business. So some of these ones come in directly from a marketing company or an advertising company, or even printers and signs and companies and different ones like that. That one there, they actually just Googled us over time, and our ratings have gone up so much that they saw us, and we are seen in the marketplace as the premier source for all graphics, vehicle wraps. We dominate my market because of the work that we've done that way.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, we really are a professional extension of those businesses. So we're partnering with them to help them grow their business and to market it. All powerful
Steve,
stuff,
my
man.
favorite story about that is that we had a situation where I came in and they're like, look, you're more expensive than this other company. And I'm like, really? I said, what are they charging for this or that? So they gave it to me, and they were like 10%, 5-10% less expensive. And I asked them simply, on those 5 or 10% less expensive items, how many times did they have to redo them because they were wrong? And they just all started laughing. And the one guy goes, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. And I said, wouldn't you rather pay for your reputation one time to get it right than to pay 2 or 3 times, be delayed, look like you don't know what you're doing, and the product is questionable, and in some cases not even right? We always won on that argument. And they never went back to that company again. And that was one of the ones that ended up going out of business.
It's a great story. All right, Dave, I want to talk about your studio and its growth. And what I mean by that is, when you started out, I'm assuming you started out with an eco-solvent printer, a plotter, and a laminator. Is that it?
That is true.
Okay, so all the folks that, again, are on this call and future calls that are buying a brand new studio, you're starting out with the same things Dave did when he started out in 2010. Difference is he had an eco-solvent printer. We start out with HP latex printers. Our speed is, you know, I'll let you talk about it. Talk to us about your initial equipment and how you upgraded it. And then we're going to talk about your staff a little bit.
I would tell you this. We started out with an eco-solvent. I mean, they're very rare today. You just don't see them anymore. We had, you know, you have your plotter, you have your laminator. Trying to think what else we had. You know, your tables and all that other stuff. But, you know, quickly into this, and about a year or so into it, I realized that I needed a flatbed because my business was growing so much. So we ended up buying a flatbed, a UV flatbed, but it was a hybrid. And that was just the first one we bought. I've bought several more from there. I actually have 3 in the studio right now. And we bought a CNC machine because we needed one. The original one I bought was used, and then we evolved into a brand new one because it substantiated itself. And we've done all sorts of stuff. I'm one of the only forklifts in the entire group that has one of the only Speed Pros that has a forklift, I should say. We just did a lot of different stuff. We're one of, I think it's 3 of us that actually do ADA, which is one of the flatbeds that I got that's specifically set up to do that. You know, the market evolves, and for my needs, the situation was that I needed to be able to do all sorts of stuff, and also to be able to, the eco solvent was good, but you have to allow an eco solvent to outgas. You know, the reason why the HP latexes and the UV printers are phenomenal is because that aspect of that business is gone. So you can do things where you don't have to wait. So our speed just drastically improved. The UV printer for me allowed me to print wall graphics like this, but also to do vehicle wraps. The latex allows you to do phenomenal vehicle wraps. But it's just one of those things. Over time, the business has evolved. Where it goes from here, you know, that's just, you got to just keep your eye on where you think things are going. But the bigger thing is to take the temperature of your business. Where do you see the business going? Where do you see the bottlenecks within your business? You know, we bought a Kala called the Mistral, and it was a high-speed roll-to-roll laminator, because we were doing so many vehicle wraps. To try to do it on the table anymore just didn't make any sense, because the old laminators just, you had to run it through and you had to go only about 10, 12, 15 feet out, and then you had to cut everything. The Kala allowed me to literally do a 150-foot roll in like 7 to 22 minutes, depending on the speed that you did. Completely laminated, all done. And all you have to do there is start cutting it. And you have the ability to put it through the Colex or the Esco and cut it down mechanically, and it just sped the whole process up. It's been an interesting experience watching that evolve over time, because you're like, oh, this is state of the art, and it's just the technology is going everywhere. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, Dave, I totally agree, and I love the fact that I stopped on this project that you did just because it has Braille. This is ADA signage. So again, for a lot of folks, you can take on these jobs even if you don't have the equipment to do it. We've got vendors, we've got nearby speed pros like Dave, in his studio.
Well, this job, Steve, was done for another speed pro. So that's one of the reasons why I included in there, because we used the Speed Pro network. One of the guys called me up and said, I have like 200 signs that I need done. Can you do them? And these are all ADA approved Braille. You can see all the letters are elevated, and the actual Braille marks underneath those numbers and the wording there. We have a software and a printer that specifically does this stuff. Like I said, we're like one of 3 speed pros in the network that do it. There's the guys up, I can't remember, it's Omaha or whatever it is, but they have a different process where theirs is super efficient on like really, really high volume stuff. We're more efficient in that, 1 to 1,000 units, depending on what you're doing. But, the nice part is we did 4,000 signs just like this Stair 3 for one company. It was the same sign over and over again. It's just a different machine. It's a different capability. And what it also does for me is I can do mugs and cups. We can do golf balls. There's lots of things that we can do depending on the event that's going on. And I bought this because we started seeing a lot of this in my marketplace. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of sending it out to some company. And a lot of times it was going out of state, in some cases even out of the country. Why am I giving my money to somebody else that way when I can do it myself? And no speed pro at the time had this. So this was something that I started doing it, got comfortable with it, and then we offered it out to the rest of the speed pros, and we've done really well with it, because this machine is constantly running. That's the whole part. It's the same thing we do with our wholesale customers, the printers, the sign companies. If they go and buy a machine like this and they're not doing business on a regular basis, those machines are going to dry out. They're going to be a problem going forward. Having the business to continue to do this to multiple different companies in different places, it keeps those machines going. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And just so all the new potential studio owners on the call, just keep in mind, say yes to everything. Obviously within reason. And if you have a question about it, ask your field consultant, ask your buddy studio, is this something I should take on? Because eventually, what you're going to find is, what am I outsourcing to other speed pros? What am I outsourcing to vendors? That's when you take on a little bit of debt with new equipment, but the equipment pays off your debt. So just keep that in mind. This isn't like running up your credit card. This is different. You're buying equipment because you have the customer base to pay off the debt that you're producing. All right, hey Dave, let's jump into. I want to talk about your projects because these are
Shoot.
all so cool. So I want to just. So what I'd like you to do is, you sent me a lot of projects, and I know some of these are probably from a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Talk to us who, like, for example, this project right here. Who is it? How did you get the job? How long did it take? And anything else you want to add to it?
This was a insurance company actually, um, and they're in I think they're in Harrisburg somewhere. I don't even remember, to be honest with you. But what what made this different is the fact that we were willing to go in there and talk to them about what they wanted and how they wanted it, and we created this from scratch basically. This is all three-dimensional. So like the B is one level, the BE, the power of, that's all a different size. The stickers, those little dots, those are all vinyl stickers on the actual wall, along with some of the wording that goes around those circles. Each one of those, which we called like lollipops in the circles, those are all three-dimensional as well. So this was a project that we worked with their designer to create. And it took, I mean, it was something I think from initial, it probably took us about 2 months from the initial, hey, we'd like to come out and measure, see what fits. We do a lot of stuff where we'll digitally drop it in. In fact, we do everything that way when we can, digitally drop it onto the wall so that they can see it. And then we'll talk about how we can make it graphically, interesting to the viewer. And that's what this one allowed us to do.
Yeah, I love it because think about it. This was a blank wall, and then Dave and his team came in, were able to digitalize, put it on the wall, so they could see what it looks like before they even get it installed. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, we have really our wall graphics. We became a preferred vendor for a major wall manufacturer this year. It's because of our work that we were able to submit into them that they were like blown away by it. So it's something that as you evolve into this, there's lots of things. This is Turkey Hill, down in what is that town? It's down by York or whatever, Columbia, that's it. And it's literally the Turkey Hill experience, which is not the same thing as Turkey Hill Farms anymore. But it's an ice cream carton that they built and then drywalled, and it's a movie theater, if you can believe that.
is
And
this a trade
so,
show? Is this a trade show
no, this
display?
is actually at the Turkey Hill experience in Columbia, where you learn about how they might make ice cream and stuff like that.
Wow.
So the whole wall is like drywall, and that red part at the top, it looks like a carton that you buy of ice cream at your Giant or whatever it is that you're at, your Wegmans, your supermarket. So we created this with them and made this happen. It was something that they had some old graphics on it, so we had to come in and take those off. There were some difficulties with some of the stuff. It's actually printed on the outside as well as the inside, which
Wow.
it's just a different project altogether. But it was a fun one to do. It's just there's so many complexities to it because of the curves. That entire piece up top, the red part, the maroon part, is a completely separate thing. And how do you do that? Was the wall in good condition? No, it was beat up. So it was just a matter of going through the project and working with them, and they were outstanding partners.
Dave, just you don't have to share this, but I'm just curious. How much would this cost the customer to for you to do this?
If I remember, because don't forget, it's wrapped on this side, the back on the left-hand side, and through the underneath on the other side as well. I think this was about $8,000 to $12,000.
And this was all vinyl.
Yeah, yeah. So we actually, I had a guy come in and remove all the old stuff that was like wallpaper. They had to clean all the walls, and then they put the vinyl up afterwards.
All right, let's talk about a big part of Speed Pro's business, which is vehicle wraps. And what makes us unique, all the new studio owners potentially on this call, um, what we require you to open up with obviously is around a 3,000 square foot location. And then you have a bay drive-in garage door, which allows you to do vehicles inside your facility. Talk to us about the dynamic of doing vehicles. How did you start to get it? And how long do these typically take? This looks like a full wrap unless the top isn't done, but this looks pretty good.
So to start, we did some wraps. You get them here and there because, again, your first couple of years, you're going after the printers and the sign companies and stuff like that. This came along actually from a car dealer. They said, hey, we've got these wraps. We're not really happy with the company that we were using. And they have seen some of the stuff that we put out. Again, one of the nice things about Speed Pro is you can actually sign yourself up to get your website populated on a regular basis with projects like this. Whether you did them or not, it's not material. And your website gets refreshed with new art, Facebook, those type of things. I just don't understand if somebody doesn't want to do this because it makes total sense. One of the things that Google looks for is refreshment on your website, actual activity, expertise in that field that you're in, that you're doing, and then also activity on social media. So every time we did a job like this, we were posting this saying, hey, here's another great van for Heim Company, sold through LB Smith, yada, yada, yada. So it's basically a full wrap except for that top of the door that you see there. And there's actually window perf on this. There's actually 2 layers. That mechanical department is actually a second surface. And we do that because if they ever want to change the van from mechanical to electrical or telecom or motors, like you see down the side, we're able to heat that up, remove the mechanical, put on motors department, and change it out for them. But it's the original design that they had was actually pretty dated and kind of crappy. And so we worked with their designer or the person that, operates the fleet. And this is one of the designs that we came up with them together. And they just loved it. And so we've done, I can show you other ones. They have all these bucket trucks and trailers and everything else where we take this and we transform it from this transit like I think it's a mid-roof long wheelbase Ford to this bucket trucks, or in some cases the trailers. And they had some other vehicles, I think ProMasters and stuff like that. And it's just part of the service that we do. But that pay-per-click program that I believe everybody has to do now was responsible for so much of this program in terms of our business. I really started delving into the pay-per-click about, I would say, 3 to 4 years ago. And my vehicle wrap business just exploded in that growth pattern that we did with that. So to say that I got my money back on that and then some would be an understatement.
Dave, maybe entertain us on how much this would cost a customer to produce. And again, this is just one vehicle of their fleet.
With the install, everything, I charge these guys about, I think this one's about $4,000 to $5,000. And they gladly pay it because we do it right. I have a great installer. He's 3M certified. He does it. Everything we use on this is 3M Control Tech, 3M 8518. The window perf is not 3M, I should say. That's a different brand. But we do the 3-year window perf. And that was something over time we learned that we weren't going to, most of the companies out there, again, I'm always about separating myself out from the competition. A lot of the other companies out there use a 1-year 50/50 window perf. In the state of Pennsylvania, you're mandated to use 50/50 with laminate. So we just noticed that a lot of the 50/50 1 year were peeling off and having issues. So there was a more expensive product out there that's the 3 year, and that's what we switched to. And what's interesting is my clients loved that we did that. Even though I'm charging them more, they were more about doing it right the first time and getting the best product than playing silly games and having a failure down the road. This is an interesting one. This is actually a race car that we did, and it came out amazing. It was a fun one. It's a partial wrap. That's a Porsche Cayenne that is not street legal. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it doesn't look street legal.
When he told me, I think it was like 12 or 1500 horsepower to the rear wheels dynoed. So it was nasty. I was going to take it down the street, but he was like, please don't do that.
You know, the one thing I skipped over, Dave, because look, if I'm scrolling through all these projects and I see a lot of creativity in all of these. Now, you talked about your background, and you know, I didn't hear you had a graphic design background. I didn't hear that you had a creative background. Well, how is this? Okay, so the majority of your business, I'm assuming your customers are saying, here's my logo, here's my art file, I need it on here. Well, talk to us about your staff and how they can help with the creative side.
Well, first of all, my background, I have a bachelor's degree in business and I have a master's degree in international marketing. But the last thing I have is any type of art degree. I make stick figures look bad. I can't draw, paint, nothing. I'm awful at it. But what I can do is see a quality product when it's done right. And that's really, for me, that's what I use as my judgment. You know, I hired a production person that had been doing it for years. He had just been bopping around, and he had lost his job because the company went under, and he was just looking for a home. My marketing person I originally started out with, she had been marketing for another company, and she was kind of like, you know, I just want to have a place to go that's consistent, that's in an interesting field, that I can be a little bit creative in. And then over time, you start hiring other people. You know, I hired a second production assistant. I have an outside designer. She's a stay-at-home mom that, you know, stays home with her kids when they're not going to school, or she still just had another baby. And she's an amazing designer. So I just pay her an hourly fee to do what I need her to do, but she's one of the team. And I have a bunch of outside contractors that I 1099 that are installers and many different things. Some of them have, you know, a sign background. Some of them are just, they do straight graphics on walls, and then some that do vehicles and stuff. But you put together a team over time. And then I hired, you know, people to be the front desk staff. And what's interesting there is the last like 2 or 3 years, we've been cross-training people so that even though they're in the front staff, if the phone's not ringing, which occasionally happens from time to time, they can take a phone in the back and help finish projects. Or in some cases, they're trained to run one of the machines or be able to install certain things. Everybody has to be able to put on decals on a car. We just made sure, because I was like, you know what? If somebody's not there, I still want to be able to do projects. A lot of it is just that cross training and making sure people are, and to be honest with you, it empowers them. They, you know, I'm not a micromanager. I like giving people the ability to get jobs done, do it quick, do it right the first time, and to build our business, and that they're part of the team.
Yeah, that's great. And the one thing I want to mention is SpeedPro also has a vendor that we prefer. If you don't have someone like Dave's using a 1099 to do graphic design for graphic design requests, we also have a vendor that'll do that. You know, and again, when would you need a graphic designer? A lot of times it's when a company needs a rebrand or of their logo, or maybe they just need something creative done, you know, and that's And look, I
The
look at it
vast
like this.
majority of the time, though, you don't, Steve, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's just we built up our business, and I charge for every design that we do. Every vehicle wrap that you see that I do, if it's from scratch, we charge an automatic $500 fee for every single one of those wraps. And what we do is we say, hey, it's a $500 design fee. It is not returnable, and you get 5 bites at the apple. So what'll happen is I'll tell them, tell me the vehicle, send me a picture of it, and then, or stop by so we can get measurements if it's unique. And then I said, send me your logo, any files, any pictures that you want, send them all to me. And then I will send them to Lauren. And what she'll do is she'll pull a template for that vehicle. And then I'll literally hook them up saying, okay, Lauren, tell them, here's what I need from you. And then say, okay, be as detailed on what you want on each side of the vehicle. And then she'll do that first design. Well, that's the first bite of the apple. And that's how it goes from there. And by doing it that way, we've had enormous success in getting vehicles from, you take that person like myself who has no design capabilities and puts it with a designer. And what happens is those vehicles get done very quickly. The person knows they're paying for it. They have a set basically time frame because they can only do it 5. And after that, they get charged another $500. It moves the project forward. And what we found over time is the person's engaged with the designer. They're directly talking to them. They're able to get these projects done quickly, efficiently, and what they want. They basically design it by just helping us help them.
All right, Dave, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I want to I think you did an amazing job talking through your journey, but I want to highlight what transpired over the last few months. Okay. So talk to us about, when you had the plan. I mean, I feel like this was the plan all along, is to be in business for about 10 plus years and then find a buyer and sell. So talk to us about that, Dave, and that transition.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, my idea was to probably do 10 to 15 years, build it up, and then sell it. There's stuff that comes along from time to time. Like my father, and I've told you this, Steve, my father's pretty sick, and he started getting really bad in 2023. And, I'm on this technically is my 14th year. And so for me, I started looking at saying, okay, what do I want to do now? There's 2 ways to go. You either reinvest, and that was the other path I was thinking about. If I didn't get anybody that was interested, I was going to reinvest. I was going to put more money into it and probably go to that next level, shooting for the $2 to $4 million range in terms of business. But I had some buyers that came along, and it worked out great. For me, it was more about, I wanted to I had accomplished all my goals. When you originally start, it's interesting when you go back to the original Speed Pros and you're looking at this and you're like, this is 2010, 2011. You're like, wow, we did 50,000 in business. Woo, and it's like, if I did 50,000 in business now, I'd be pissed.
Right.
So you see people now. You're looking at guys every month we get a scale of where you are, and you see guys. There was a guy that did $926,000 in 1 month. Holy cow, And now you're looking at it from a business point of view, saying, I need that $100,000 to $300,000 month every month. That's what I'm shooting for, and it's attainable. I mean, Harrisburg is not a big market.
Talk to us about Harrisburg real quick, because I should have done that in the beginning. Talk to us about the market of Harrisburg.
Harrisburg's about, I think the whole total population, including the suburbs, is about 580,000 people. It's not very big. There's a good amount of business here, but there's not a tremendous amount of business. A lot of farmland, that type of stuff. But for me, it was something that I saw an opportunity where printers were looking at this business and knowing that they needed to do large format. When I was telling you about the Dreamscape thing, Dreamscape's estimating that their wall graphics are going to grow between, I think the number was 40 and 80% a year for the next probably 5 to 10 years. What you see behind you on the graphics of your wall, this is what people want. When I was just talking to a lady earlier, I was showing her some of these graphics. That West Shore Christian Academy, that's the one I literally just showed her. I said, we took a dead wall in a high school and made it into a spot where the kids literally, almost like Notre Dame, they're tapping the wall when they go to do stuff. It buys into the actual school. It's a participation. It's a, I want to be on that wall thing. And it took literally a dead wall and made it into almost like the Holy Grail. It's just really interesting how those walls and those graphics can transport you. I was telling her that we did a guy's wall in his garage, built this brand new house. He bought a Corvette, and he wanted, when he parked his Corvette at night, he had this whole checkerboard on the floor, he did, and he wanted to look like the wall was the checkerboard thing on the Indianapolis 500. And that's exactly what his garage looks like. You're driving down, what is that, brick road or brickyard road, onto and through the checkered flag at the Indianapolis 500. We had a kid that his parents wanted to cheer him up for something, and he was a big space kid. And so they literally did this Cosmos thing on his wall. It's incredible what you can do with this stuff and transform like a dead space to something like this, where it says a message about who you are, what you can do. It's absolutely incredible. And this is one that we came up for them. They didn't know what they wanted to do. They just know that they knew that they wanted to do something, but they didn't have a clue. And we started talking to them about it. And this was an idea that came up saying, why don't we do like a wall of fame? And we'll put the West Shore Christian Academy. And then all the way down at the end, it says their kind of like their mantra. And it's just, the kids absolutely loved it. And the school was like, oh my God, we have to do more of these. So it's just interesting how that happens and how that transforms.
You know, I want to add to that, Dave. My wife at her company, you know, now that we're a few years after COVID, they want everybody to come back to work. And so what they're doing is they're doing wall murals for everybody. So their office has a little bit of personality to help them come back. I want everybody to remember that when you walk into an office complex and it's not very sexy and glitzy, you can make it sexy and glitzy by these wall murals that Dave just talked about. I mean, there's so much opportunity, because when you're outside of an office complex, you might see the address, but you don't see a lot of glitz. You can add that to the inside of that building. All right, Dave, I got two more questions. Sure. And then I got one question that I want to ask. What would you do differently? I know I've asked you this before in the past. What advice would you give to anybody on this call that's thinking about, you know, stepping out of the airplane and going skydiving and opening up a business?
Honestly, you're going to have days where you're going to want to jump out the plane without a parachute. And then there's going to be the days that you're like, you're chest pumping, you're just stepping because you landed a project like this, or you got the big opportunity and you cashed in and you blew it out of the water and they can't say enough about you. I guess a lot of ways, probably if I could do it all again, I would absolutely do it. I'd probably, honestly, I think in the end, some of the reasons why I sold, I wish I prepared a little bit more in the sense of how you position your business to look as best as you can for when you go to sell it. And that's one of the things I know Speed Pro is working on with you and some other people, so that program's in place, saying, okay, somebody approaches you, Steve, and says, hey, in 2027, that's my go year. I want to get going. That's where Speed Pro starts saying, okay, well, here's the things that you need to do. Let's get your EBITDA to where we want it to be. Let's get your studio to that point where we get the absolute best price, sale, contract, everything for you. You know, in my situation with my father, I wasn't in that spot. So that was, I mean, I did very well. Let's put it that way. I did very, very well on the sale of the business, and I'm happy, but everybody always wants more. We wouldn't be, you know, who we are and what we are if we didn't. But you know, sometimes you see the outside stuff. I mean, I wish I had done more stuff in terms of success planning, you know, succession planning in terms of that. Maybe a little bit more, you know, I'm very goal oriented, but there's other things that I needed to reach out to and look at, get more involved in maybe my, the chamber, things like that. You know, you kind of get pigeonholed sometimes in terms of being real focused on certain things. And there's other avenues that you can get stuff from, and they don't even have to be costly ones. We joined the AIA a couple of years ago, which is the Architects Institute of America. And, you know, that's paying benefits now because we're able to handle what the architects give them. They can give us drawings and we can do something. When you start out, you can't do that. I probably should have gotten into that a little bit more. And that was something that I found out from Ask the Owners, to be honest with you. So I was like, God, how do you guys approach your architects in your city? And somebody's like, well, that's not just city, it's state. So I would probably say I would have interacted more with the speed pros that are out there is another thing I probably should have done. But I mean, sometimes you're on an island to yourself and you're just go time, you know what I mean? You're so busy on stuff, but those are things that could have even made the business even better. Let's put it that way.
So I want to, we did get a question. I want to tie it into what you just said about Ask the Owners, interacting with the network. How did you learn, or how would a new franchisee learn where to buy things that they can't produce in-house? So
you get it from Ask the Owners. You get it from for me, it was my regional developer. You know, like I know, like you know, I would call certain those three guys that I was telling you about. I'd be like, hey, where'd you guys get this? But you know, back then there wasn't an Ask the Owners, and by having that Ask the Owners, if you put it out there, you'll get 4 and 5 different places to get those different products outsourced and handled so as if it looks like you're doing it. I mean, again, I didn't do Braille, but I did because I use that outsourcing. The guy Wayne up in Boston doesn't do Braille, but he does now because I can provide it for him throughout the network. And it really helped him grasp business that he didn't have before, because not only did he get the wall graphics, but he also got the wall signs. So it's what I always tell people is that, you know, by using Speed Pro, a printer, a sign company is able to go deeper into the pockets of their customers without having to do another thing. It's no different that way by outsourcing that. I'm able to get something else done. I have a countermat project I'm working on. I can't do a countermat like this. I can't do it. It's just not something, it's made on a rubber product, but because I have a great outsource company to do it, that's who I'm sending it to. They'll send it to me. I take it to my customer. Here you go. And they're good to go. That's really what the Smart Track does, except you're doing it with outsourcing. Not everything has to be you. You can work smarter. And that's what we do.
All right, Dave. Dave, I could talk to you all day about all this and about other stuff too, but I gotta cut this call. I want to say thank you to you, obviously. This isn't goodbye, but you know, I can't wait to continue working with you. Everybody on the call, thank you for your time. Folks that are going to be listening to this in the near future, far future, please let me know if you have any questions. I can't wait to welcome all of you into the Speed Pro family. And thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week and have a great weekend. Dave, Kate is going to be in contact with you shortly after this call to show her gratitude.
Please.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.